In 1986, a 38-year-old Brazilian man strapped on a backpack and walked 700 kilometers alone through the mountains of Spain. He had no guarantee he would succeed. He had no guarantee he would even survive. But he walked anyway. Before Paulo Coelho became one of the best-selling authors in human history, he was a man who had lost everything. Born in Rio de Janeiro in 1947, he grew up in a middle-class family with dreams too big for his world. His parents wanted him to become an engineer. He wanted to become a writer. That conflict would define the first 40 years of his life. His path was brutal. The Brazilian military government imprisoned him 3 times. He was tortured. He was broken. He lost years of his life to institutions that wanted to silence him. And yet something inside him refused to disappear. By his late 30s, Coelho had survived prison, failure, and years of chasing the wrong dreams. He had been a songwriter, a theater director, a hippie traveler, and yet he felt completely empty. Something fundamental was missing. Not money, not fame, not success. Something deeper, something he could not name, something that no external achievement could ever fill. In 1986, as part of a Catholic spiritual order called RAM, Coelho was given a task that would change everything. Walk the road to Santiago. The Camino de Santiago, an ancient pilgrimage route stretching 700 kilometers through the north of Spain. A road that millions of people had walked for over 1,000 years, searching for something greater than themselves. He was told that at the end of the road, if he proved worthy, he would find his sword, a symbol of his spiritual power and his true purpose in life. He packed his backpack and flew to France. He began his walk in the French Pyrenees, in the shadow of mountains that had watched over pilgrims for centuries. The first steps were full of excitement and hope. He was finally doing something real, something that mattered. But the road had other plans. The Camino does not care about your excitement. It does not care about your intentions or your dreams or your reasons. It cares only about one thing, your commitment. Are you willing to keep walking when every part of you wants to stop? His guide on the road was a man named Petrus. Petrus was not what Coelho expected. He was not a wise old sage with gentle words and infinite patience. He was rough, direct, sometimes brutal, and that was exactly what Coelho needed. Not comfort, not reassurance, truth. The first lesson came immediately, and it was devastatingly simple. Petrus told him, "The extraordinary is never found in extraordinary places. It is found in the ordinary moments of every single day, not in temples, not in sacred texts, not in the words of great masters on mountaintops, in the road beneath your feet, in the breath in your lungs, in the step you are taking right now." Every day, Petrus taught simple practices to reconnect with life, how to breathe with intention, how to walk with full awareness, how to face fear without running from it. These were not mystical secrets. They were ancient tools that modern life had buried under layers of noise and distraction. The road was not comfortable. There were blisters that made every step feel like fire. There was rain that soaked through everything. There were nights in strange places with no warmth and no certainty, and moments of complete and total doubt. Why am I doing this? What is the point? Who am I to think I deserve anything different? But Coelho kept walking, not because he was strong, not because he was certain, but because he had made a decision. And the road teaches you one thing above everything else: you only learn by moving forward. Standing still is not rest. Standing still is just a slower way of going backwards. The most dangerous obstacle on the road was not external, it was himself, his own fears dressed up as practicality, his own ego dressed up as wisdom, his own past dressed up as identity, all of it waiting for him on the road, testing him every single day. One day, a large and terrifying dog blocked his path. "Face it directly," Petrus said. "Do not run, do not go around, face it." The dog was a symbol of his deepest anxiety, the fear that had been following him his entire life, the fear that he was not enough. Facing the dog changed everything. His fears were not walls, they were doors. Every fear he had ever avoided was actually an invitation to discover who he was capable of becoming on the other side. Petrus told him, "The secret of life is to fall 7 times and get up 8, not to never fall, not to be perfect, but to keep getting up, every single time, without exception. This is the only strategy that has ever worked for anyone who has achieved anything worth achieving. Most people stop walking when the road gets hard. They tell themselves they will start again tomorrow, or next week, or when conditions are better, but conditions are never better. The road is always hard. The pilgrim keeps going not because the road gets easier, but because he gets stronger. The road has a way of stripping everything away: the titles, the opinions of others, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. On the Camino, there is only the next step. And in that simplicity, Coelho understood something profound. Most of his suffering had never been caused by his circumstances. It had been caused by his resistance to them. Halfway through the journey, something shifted inside Coelho. He had a vision. He saw himself not as he was tired, uncertain, full of doubt, but as he could be, the man he was capable of becoming if he refused to stop. And the gap between those two versions was terrifying. Because the only thing standing between them was a choice. His choice, made every single day. Petrus once stopped walking and looked at Coelho directly. He said, "You are afraid of winning, not of losing, winning, because winning means responsibility. It means you can no longer blame the world for where you are. It means the next failure is entirely yours, and that terrifies most people more than any dog on any road." Coelho understood in that moment that his real enemy had never been outside him. It had always been the part of him that preferred comfortable excuses to uncomfortable truth. The Camino is not really about reaching Santiago. Santiago is just a destination on a map. The real journey is internal. Every step on the physical road is a metaphor for a step in the internal one. Every step is a choice. Every obstacle is a teacher. Every moment of doubt is an invitation to discover what you truly believe about yourself and about life. The Camino does not give you answers. It gives you the right questions, and the right questions lead you to your own truth. There is a particular kind of silence that only exists on long roads walked alone, not the silence of emptiness, the silence of presence. Every sound becomes sharp, every color becomes vivid, every breath becomes intentional. Coelho had spent his entire life running from this silence, filling every moment with noise and distraction. The Camino forced him to stop running, and in that silence he began to hear something he had never heard before. His own voice, clear, certain, unafraid. The final stretch must always be walked alone. No guide, no master, no safety net. Just you and the road and everything you have learned about yourself along the way. This is where most people fail, not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are waiting for someone to walk the last mile with them. A mentor, a partner, a sign from the universe, but nobody can walk your last mile. That mile belongs only to you. The loneliness of the final stretch is not a punishment, it is a gift. It is the road's way of showing you that you have everything you need. That you always did. The guidance you were looking for outside yourself was inside you the entire time. You just needed the road to show you where to look. The ancient pilgrims who walked before Coelho left marks everywhere, crosses carved into stones, names scratched into walls, each one a testimony: I was here, I did not give up. Coelho thought about all of them, ordinary people who had faced extraordinary fear and kept walking anyway. He realized that courage was never the absence of fear. Courage was the decision that something else mattered more than the fear. As Coelho approached Santiago, the road became quieter, more certain, as if the ancient stones had absorbed the prayers and tears of every pilgrim who had ever walked this path before him. He thought about Petrus, about every lesson, about every moment he had wanted to give up and had not. He understood now that Petrus had not been teaching him about the road. He had been teaching him about himself. Every guide who ever mattered was really just a mirror showing you who you already were. When Coelho arrived at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, he found no dramatic revelation, no lightning, no voice from above, only the quiet understanding that he had done it. 700 kilometers, every fear, every doubt, every obstacle, and he was still standing. His sword was waiting, not because he was special. Not because he had been chosen above others, but because he had refused to stop. The sword was not a reward for being great. It was a recognition of a simple truth: you earn your purpose not by being born with it. You earn it by walking toward it every single day, even when you cannot see it. The man who finished was not the same man who had started. He was quieter, more certain, less impressed by noise and more drawn to depth. He had not found God in a cathedral. He had found something more powerful: himself, on the other side of fear. There is a moment on every long journey when you realize the person who started is not the person who will finish. One morning you wake up, and the fear that used to paralyze you feels smaller. The doubt that used to silence you feels distant. The road strips away everything unnecessary. What remains is something rare and precious, the truest version of yourself. Paulo Coelho returned and wrote The Pilgrimage. The book resonated because it was true, Not just true for Coelho, true for everyone who has ever stood at the beginning of a hard road and wondered whether they had what it takes. 1 year later, he wrote The Alchemist, translated into 80 languages, read by 65 million people, one of the best-selling books in human history. It started on a road in Spain. It started with one step. Everything great always starts with one single step. So what does the pilgrimage teach us today? 3 lessons that have nothing to do with Spain and everything to do with the road you are walking right now. First, the road is the destination. Stop waiting to arrive. Your real life is happening right now, in the struggle, in the uncertainty, in the step you are taking today even though you cannot see where it leads. The person you are becoming in this moment, that is the point, not the destination, the journey itself. Second, ordinary is where the magic lives. Coelho found his purpose in blisters and rain and conversations with strangers on a dusty road. The extraordinary life you are looking for is not hiding in some distant place. It is buried inside the ordinary moments you are living right now. You just have to slow down enough to see it. Stop looking for the extraordinary in extraordinary places. Start finding it in the ordinary moments that surround you every single day. Third, walk your own camino. Nobody can tell you what your path looks like. Nobody can walk it for you. Every guide can show you the road but cannot take the steps. Only you can do that. The only wrong choice, the only true failure, is to stand still. Every great life you have ever admired started with someone standing exactly where you are standing right now, uncertain, imperfect, not ready, and choosing to walk anyway, not because they knew they would succeed, but because standing still was no longer an option they were willing to accept. Santiago was never really the destination. It was the mirror, the place where Coelho finally saw himself clearly for the first time, not as the failed writer, not as the imprisoned rebel, but as someone who had chosen to walk when walking was hard, someone who had faced the dog, someone who had gotten up 8 times after falling 7. The road does not end at Santiago, it never ends. Every morning you wake up, the road continues. Every decision you make is another step. Every fear you face is another door. Every time you choose to keep going instead of standing still, you are still walking. You are still rising. The sword is waiting at the end of your road, not as a reward for being perfect, but as a recognition of something simple and true. You walked, you fell, you got up, you kept going, and you arrived. This story moves something in you. You already know what road you need to walk. Still rising. There are 2 kinds of people in this world, those who talk about the road and those who walk it. Coelho had spent the first 40 years of his life talking, planning, preparing, waiting for the right moment, the right conditions, the right sign, and the right moment never came, because it never does. The right moment is a myth invented by people who are afraid to begin. The only real moment is now. The only real step is the one in front of you. Everything else is just a story you tell yourself to stay comfortable. The Camino teaches you this lesson in the most direct way possible. It does not give you time to plan. It does not give you space to hesitate. Every morning you wake up and the road is there, and you either walk or you do not. There is no middle ground, no compromise, no negotiation. And in that brutal simplicity, something extraordinary happens. You discover that you are capable of far more than you ever believed, not because the road is easy, but because you keep walking anyway. Coelho had carried his fears for so long that he had stopped noticing their weight. They had become part of him, familiar, almost comfortable. The fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of being seen, the fear of being invisible, the fear of not being enough, of never being enough. Most people carry these same fears their entire lives without ever setting them down. The Camino forced Coelho to set them down, not by removing them, but by making him walk forward despite them. And somewhere between the Pyrenees and Santiago, he realized the fears had not disappeared. He had simply become bigger than them. This is the real gift of any pilgrimage, not the destination, not the revelation at the end, not the dramatic moment when everything becomes clear. The real gift is what the road does to you along the way. It strips away everything that was never really you, the performance, the pretending, the carefully constructed identity you show the world. And what remains when all of that falls away is something terrifying and beautiful and completely your own, your actual self, the person you were always meant to be before the world told you who you should be instead. Coelho understood this standing in front of the Cathedral of Santiago. He was not the same man who had started. He was smaller in some ways, humbler, quieter, less certain of things that had once seemed obvious, and larger in others, more grounded, more honest, more willing to be exactly who he was without apology. The road had not given him anything new. It had simply removed everything false, and what was left was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The Alchemist tells the story of a shepherd who travels the world searching for treasure only to discover it was buried at home all along. But Coelho knew something the shepherd did not know at the beginning. You cannot find what is buried at home without first leaving home. You cannot discover who you are without first losing who you thought you were. The journey is not a detour from the destination. The journey is the destination. It has always been the destination. Santiago was just the place where Coelho finally understood this. What is the road you have been avoiding? What is the fear you have been calling by another name? Practicality, timing, responsibility, not being ready yet. The road does not wait for you to be ready. Nobody is ever ready. Readiness is not a feeling that arrives before you begin. It is something that grows inside you as you walk, step by step, day by day, until one morning you wake up and realize you are ready. You have been ready for a long time. You just needed the road to show you.